Rain pounded the polycarbonate dome of New Atlantis like an angry drummer in a broken band. The sound resonated through the floating city, a constant reminder that the ocean had all the patience of an enraged cat with its tail caught in a door. Sylvan Mira, captain, explorer, and part-time philosopher of life's unending toilet flush, squinted at the horizon where water met more water. "Another lovely day in the paradise we never asked for," she muttered, adjusting the strap of her weathered utility vest. The vest had seen more action than a soap opera protagonist, complete with stains that told tales of questionable origin. Delta, the AI companion assigned to Sylvan, responded with the verbal equivalent of a shrug. "At least it keeps the algae thriving," the AI chimed from the small speaker embedded in Sylvan's wrist console. "You humans love thriving ecosystems, don't you?" "Sure," Sylvan said, "when they're not trying to eat us or turn us into extras in a disaster flick." The city of New Atlantis wasn't much to look at, but then neither was most of humanity's floating refuges that dotted Earth's watery grave. It consisted of linked hexagonal platforms that might have been innovative if they weren't held together by duct tape and desperation. Sylvan's crew of explorers were scattered across the deck, each one a unique flavor of misfit. There was Grit, the grizzled engineer who swore every leak could be fixed with a hammer and a choice expletive. Next to him, Ash was tinkering with a drone that looked like it had been on the wrong end of a bar brawl. Ash was the team's tech specialist and wore a permanent scowl that could cut through hull plating. "When's the last time you smiled?" Sylvan asked, leaning on the railing next to Ash. "When's the last time the ocean stopped trying to kill us?" Ash replied without looking up. Sylvan smirked. "Touché. Any luck with that thing?" Ash grunted, more of a sound than a word. "Depends on your definition of luck. If it's flying in a straight line, then no. If it's catching fire, then yes, we're very lucky. I'll take flaming drones over boredom any day." "Keeps things exciting," Sylvan said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Delta, ever the optimist in ones and zeros, chimed in. "Exciting is one way to put it. I prefer life-threateningly stimulating." Just then, the deck trembled beneath their feet, the kind of tremor that suggested something significant had just happened, possibly something that would require a lot of paperwork. Sylvan snapped to attention. "What now?" Grit ambled over, looking like he'd just woken up from a nap under a cement truck. "We got something on the scanner," he said, waving a grimy tablet. "Picked up a signal." "Signal?" Sylvan echoed, her interest piqued. "What kind of signal?" "The, not from around here, kind," Grit replied, scratching at his stubbled chin. "Figures. Just when I thought we were the only idiots left." "Alien?" Ash perked up, her scowl temporarily replaced by something like excitement. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Sylvan warned, though her heart was doing an enthusiastic tap dance at the prospect. "Could be anything. A rogue satellite. A piece of military junk. Or yes, maybe even ET. Delta piped in. "Probability of extraterrestrial origin is currently inconclusive, but I would be thrilled to add first contact to my resume." "You have a resume?" Sylvan quipped. "I like to think of it as a digital scrapbook," Delta replied. "Great," Sylvan said. "We find aliens and the first thing they meet is our half-baked AI with a personality disorder." "Hey," Delta protested, "I resemble that remark." Sylvan turned toward the control cabin, beckoning her crew to follow. "Let's not waste any more time. If there's something out there, I want to see it before it decides we're not worth the effort." The control cabin was a cramped affair, with screens that flickered with the determination of a dying light bulb. Sylvan plopped into the captain's chair, a relic from an era when luxury was defined by anything more than 3 cushions. "Delta," she instructed, "lock onto that signal. Let's find out where it's coming from." "With pleasure," Delta replied, a whirring sound accompanying its efforts. The screens lit up with lines of code and data streams as Delta worked its digital magic. The rest of the team crowded around, each one eager to catch a glimpse of whatever had stirred the proverbial pot. A holographic map projected into the air, highlighting an area a few nautical miles from their current location. "Seems to be coming from the depths," Delta announced. Sylvan leaned back, a thoughtful look on her face. "Guess we're going swimming." "Oh good," Ash said, deadpan. "I was hoping for a chance to drown today. Really breaks up the monotony of existential dread." "Think of it as a chance to get some fresh sea air," Sylvan said, earning a glare from Ash. "Sea air is an oxymoron," Ash retorted. "So am I, yet here we are." Sylvan replied with a wink. Let's prep the submersible. The crew busied themselves with preparations, loading the small, cramped submersible with equipment that might prove useful or just end up as expensive ballast. Sylvan took the pilot's seat, the controls familiar and worn under her hands. All aboard, she declared, as the hatch sealed with a hiss. Delta's voice crackled through the intercom. I'll be monitoring from here. Try not to get eaten by anything prehistoric. No promises, Sylvan shot back. Keep the champagne on ice, just in case. The submersible detached from New Atlantis with a metallic thunk, descending into the inky depths. The ocean swallowed them, enveloping the vessel in a cold embrace that was as welcoming as a tax audit. Visibility dropped to nearly nothing, the forward lights cutting through the darkness in thin, trembling beams. The only sound was the hum of the engines and the occasional creak of pressure testing the sub's integrity. I feel like canned tuna, Ash muttered, eyes glued to the sonar display. Cheer up, Sylvan said. Maybe we'll find Nemo down here. Or Cthulhu, Grit added. Wouldn't that be a kick in the pants? Delta's voice came through the speaker with a hint of excitement. Approaching the source of the signal, the sonar painted a picture of something large and metallic resting on the seafloor. As they drew closer, the lights revealed a sleek, alien probe, its surface etched with symbols that glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light. Well, it's not a weather balloon, Ash observed dryly. Unless the weather's gotten really weird, Sylvan replied. The probe was definitely alien, its design both mesmerizing and unnerving, like it was designed by a race that appreciated both art and existential dread. What's it doing? Grit asked, his voice tinged with awe. Broadcasting, Delta answered. Signals of peace and curiosity. Great, Sylvan said. The universe's version of a welcome mat. Or a trap, Ash cautioned. Sylvan nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. Either way, I think we should say hello. Delta's voice was laced with mischief. Initiating contact protocol. Let's hope they're more close encounters than War of the Worlds. The submersible's communication systems engaged, sending out a reply encoded with humanity's finest, mathematical constants, basic language structures, and a small file of cat videos. If the probe liked those, maybe the universe wasn't such a bad place after all. There, Sylvan said, leaning back. Now we wait, and hope we didn't just invite an interstellar eviction notice, Ash said. As they hovered near the probe, the tension in the small cabin was almost palpable. Each second stretched into infinity, anticipation mingling with dread. Finally, a response came, a series of tones and lights that seemed almost musical in their sequence. Delta translated eagerly, they say they're curious too. And they like the cats. Well, that's a relief, Sylvan said with a laugh. For a minute there I thought we'd have to explain TikTok. As the exchange continued, the probe emitted a new signal, one that pointed not just at Earth, but beyond, to the stars. Looks like they want to meet in person, Delta translated. Sylvan's eyes glinted with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. First contact, huh? Yeah, Ash said, her voice softening with unexpected hope. And they like us. For now, Grit added with a chuckle. Let's not mess it up. No promises, Sylvan replied, staring out into the vastness of the ocean. But one thing's for sure, we're in for one hell of a ride. The submersible began its ascent, leaving the alien probe behind like a floating monolith of mystery. As they rose towards the surface, the promise of a new chapter for humanity awaited above, and for once, Sylvan felt that maybe, just maybe, things were looking up. The submersible bobbed at the surface like a misfit rubber duck, surrounded by the endless, indifferent sprawl of water that stretched out beyond the horizon. Sylvan and her crew clambered out, wet and cold and more than a little perturbed by the realization that, somehow, they just RSVP'd to the universe's most exclusive party. The city of New Atlantis loomed nearby, a decaying testament to humanity's tenacity or perhaps its stubborn refusal to admit defeat. Ash pulled herself out of the sub, shaking off water like an irritated cat. Well, that was invigorating, she grumbled. Nothing like a potential alien invasion to spice up the weekend. Who said anything about invasion? Sylvan countered, smirking as she helped Grit haul the equipment back onto the deck. For all we know, they just want directions to the nearest Starbucks. Yeah, because that's what aliens travel light years for, Ash snorted. A venti mocha latte. Grit, ever the mechanical optimist, wiped his hands on his grimy overalls and squinted at the horizon. Coffee or conquest, we better be ready. I don't fancy becoming a footnote in some alien history book. Delta's voice crackled over the wrist console, the AI's synthetic cheerfulness unfazed by the gravity of the situation. If they have history books, they might just use holographic memory clouds or something equally advanced. Great, Ash muttered. So when they wipe us out, it'll be in 3D. Sylvan chuckled, though a little unease gnawed at the back of her mind. They had poked a cosmic bear, and now they had to wait to see if it would growl or just roll over and go back to sleep. Back in the control cabin, the cramped space was alive with the hum of monitors and the quiet chatter of machinery. Sylvan settled into her chair, absently tapping her fingers against the console as she considered their situation. It was an odd feeling, being at the nexus of something so staggeringly important. The kind of feeling that usually reserved itself for people not adrift on a floating city of hexagons. Delta, give me a status update on the probe, she said, cutting through the static of her thoughts. Signal is holding steady, Delta replied. Though, just between us, I think it might be a little nervous. Sylvan raised an eyebrow. Nervous? How does an alien probe get nervous? It's transmitting in a pattern that suggests heightened activity, Delta explained. Either it's excited, or it's in the middle of a very intense game of solitaire. Well, let's hope it's the former, Sylvan said. I'd hate to think we just interrupted an intergalactic card game. Ash plopped down next to Sylvan, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she tried to piece together the snippets of data they'd gathered from the probe. We need to figure out what this thing is saying, she muttered. Before it decides we're not worth the trouble. Grit leaned in over Ash's shoulder, his brows furrowed as he scrutinized the alien symbols on the screen. Looks like gibberish to me. Like someone threw a bunch of spaghetti at a wall and called it a language. Well, it's not supposed to make sense to us, Ash replied, her tone dripping with sarcasm. They didn't exactly design it with a translation app in mind. Sylvan watched them for a moment, then turned her attention back to Delta. Keep monitoring that signal. If it changes, I want to know immediately. Delta's voice maintained its chipper tone. Roger that. I've got my digital fingers crossed. Wonderful, Grit said, scratching his stubbly chin. An AI more optimistic than a lottery winner. Just what we need. Sylvan cast a sidelong glance at him. Hey, if we're going to meet our alien neighbors, might as well do it with a smile. Ash snorted. Speak for yourself. I'm saving my smiles for when we're not potential alien fodder. The hours dragged on, stretching into eternity as the crew worked tirelessly to decode the alien language. Symbols and sounds danced across the screens, a cosmic jigsaw puzzle with pieces that refused to fit neatly together. Sylvan found herself pacing the small confines of the cabin, her mind a tangled mess of curiosity and trepidation. What if it's not friendly? Grit voiced the unspoken fear, his tone uncharacteristically serious. What if we've just invited them to bring the pain? Then we'll just have to deal with it, Sylvan replied firmly. No point worrying about what we can't control. Yeah, like climate change and taxes, Ash added dryly, earning a chuckle from Sylvan. Delta chimed in, statistically, the probability of hostile intent is low. Most species capable of interstellar travel tend to prioritize exploration over extermination. Good to know, Grit said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry red, Sylvan finally called for a break. The crew shuffled out onto the deck, the salty air a welcome reprieve from the stale confines of the cabin. Ash leaned against the railing, staring out at the endless ocean. So, Captain, what's our next move? Sylvan shrugged, her gaze following the rhythmic dance of the waves. We wait, and hope they like cat videos enough to spare us. Well, they say laughter's the universal language, Grit chimed in, his usual cynicism replaced by a flicker of hope. And if that fails, there's always interpretive dance, Ash added with a smirk. The lighthearted banter did little to quell the undercurrent of anxiety that simmered beneath the surface. They had opened a door to the stars, but what lay beyond was anyone's guess. Back inside, Delta's voice interrupted the quiet lull. Incoming transmission from the probe. It's trying to establish a deeper connection. Sylvan's heart skipped a beat. What kind of connection? Enhanced communication, Delta replied. It's sending a sequence of data that suggests it wants to exchange knowledge. All right, Sylvan said, her resolve hardening. Let's see what it wants to share. The screens flickered with activity as the probe's transmission flowed through the subnetwork, painting a picture in abstract colors and shapes. It was beautiful, in a vaguely threatening way, like a snake with a particularly fetching pattern. Is it me, or does anyone else feel like they're about to sit an exam they didn't study for? Grit asked, rubbing the back of his neck. Relax, Ash said. We'll just wing it. Worked in school, didn't it? The crew settled in, eyes glued to the monitors as the exchange unfolded. Bit by bit, the alien language began to take form, its intricacies entangling under the crew's relentless scrutiny. I think we're getting somewhere, Ash said, excitement creeping into her voice. See this pattern here? It's like a key. If we can crack it, we might be able to communicate. Sylvan nodded, her own excitement tempered by caution. Delta, can you assist with translation? Delta's digital enthusiasm was palpable. Already ahead of you, Captain. I'm running the data through every linguistic algorithm available. As the minutes ticked by, the symbols began to morph, aligning themselves with familiar concepts and ideas. The crew watched in awe as the language of the stars slowly revealed its secrets, a tapestry of thought and emotion that transcended the boundaries of worlds. This is incredible, Sylvan breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. It's like we're seeing the universe through someone else's eyes. Yeah, cosmic perspective and all that, Ash said, though there was a glimmer of appreciation in her gaze. Delta's voice was practically buzzing with excitement. I believe I have a rudimentary translation. The probe is offering to share star charts and technological knowledge. Star charts? Grit echoed, a slow grin spreading across his face. Now that's something. Technological knowledge, Ash repeated, her scowl softening ever so slightly. That could change everything, or blow us up, Sylvan cautioned, though her mind raced with the possibilities. But whatever it is, it's too important to ignore. The crew exchanged glances, a silent agreement forming between them. They had stumbled onto something far greater than themselves, and now they had a choice to make. So, we say yes? Grit asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Sylvan nodded, her resolve unwavering. Yes, let's see what the universe has to offer. Delta initiated the exchange, sending a confirmation signal to the probe. The cabin was silent, the air heavy with anticipation as they waited for a response. When it came, it was like a floodgate opening. Data streamed in, overwhelming in its scope and complexity. The crew watched, entranced, as the secrets of the cosmos unfolded before them, a glimpse into a reality they had never dreamed of. Well, Ash said, her voice a mix of awe and disbelief. Looks like we're not just floating in a sea of despair anymore. Sylvan grinned, a spark of hope flaring to life amidst the uncertainty. Looks like we've got a whole universe to explore. And as the night stretched on, the crew of New Atlantis found themselves at the dawn of a new era, a journey that promised adventure, danger, and perhaps, if they were lucky, a brighter future. The submersible rocked gently beneath the waves, its hull creaking in a way that definitely didn't inspire confidence. Sylvan leaned back in her chair, eyes glued to the screen as streams of alien data continued to flood their systems. They had cracked the door open, and now a tidal wave of cosmic secrets threatened to wash them away. Delta, you keeping up with all this? Sylvan asked, running a hand through her hair, which had decided to imitate a bird's nest somewhere between midnight and sanity. Like a caffeinated squirrel, Captain, Delta replied with its trademark chirpiness. I'm collating the data into manageable chunks. Think of it as cosmic granola. Tasty, Sylvan muttered. Any sign of trouble? Depends on your definition of trouble, Delta said. If you mean the usual, then yes, but on a galactic scale. Ash snorted from her spot by the console. Lovely. And here I was hoping our new alien pals might bring us something useful, like a universal remote or a cure for hangovers. Grit looked up from his terminal, eyebrow arched. Maybe they have, and we just can't read the instruction manual. The banter was interrupted by a harsh blare from the console, an unfamiliar signal slicing through the static. Sylvan exchanged a quick look with Ash and Grit, who were already snapping to attention like soldiers who had just realized they wore their helmets backward. What's that? Sylvan demanded, pointing at the screen where a new set of coordinates had just popped up, accompanied by a series of rhythmic pulses. Delta's voice was tight, as cheerful as a funeral director with a sale on caskets. It appears to be a secondary signal, Captain. It's being transmitted by a spacecraft on the edge of our solar system. Great, Ash said, hands flying over the keyboard. More company. Just what we needed. Grit frowned at the screen, his usual optimism tempered by the encroaching reality of their situation. Wonderful. And here I thought we'd finally get some peace and quiet. Sylvan sighed, steeling herself for the inevitable. Delta, get me everything you can on that ship. I want to know who's knocking on our door. On it, Captain. Though, I must say, they're not exactly subtle. Sylvan leaned forward, trying to decipher the jumble of data streaming across the screen. It seemed their little chat with the probe had drawn the attention of another party, one with a penchant for dramatic entrances. Whoever they are, they're close, Ash said, her sarcasm dialed down a notch. Yeah, too close for comfort, Sylvan agreed. Let's hope they're friendlier than they sound. As they worked, a shape began to materialize on the sensor readouts. It was large, roughly the size of a small moon, and moving with the deliberate grace of an interstellar cruise liner that had skipped several safety inspections. A chill ran down Sylvan's spine, the kind that usually accompanied a bad omen or an unpaid parking ticket. Well, that's not ominous at all, Grid remarked, staring at the growing outline on the screen. A moment later, Delta's voice broke through, tinged with the kind of glee reserved for revealing a hidden plot twist. Identified as the Zoltari vessel, known for advanced technology, excessive zeal, and a reputation for interpreting interstellar signals as divine messages. Divine messages? Sylvan echoed, disbelief coloring her voice. Let me get this straight. These guys think we're sending them a love letter from the gods? Affirmative, Delta chirped. They've likely interpreted our communication with the probe as a sign. Ash rolled her eyes. Perfect. So, basically, we've got a bunch of religious fanatics on our doorstep. Sylvan rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down like an ill-fitting helmet. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse. The Zoltari ship loomed closer, its presence a dark shadow over the floating city of New Atlantis. The crew watched as a transmission from the vessel began to flicker on the screen, a series of symbols and sounds that defied comprehension. Delta, can you translate? Sylvan asked, her voice edged with urgency. Attempting now, Delta replied, the sound of hurried processing lacing its words. Stand by. The translation appeared slowly, line by line, like an ancient text being unearthed by a particularly slow archaeologist. Greetings, Earthlings. We, the Zoltari, have received your holy message, it read. We come in reverence to partake in the divine wisdom you offer. Ash snorted. Divine wisdom? They must be getting us confused with someone else. Sylvan shook her head. This is bad, really bad. If they think we're some sort of cosmic messiah, they'll expect, well, something. Like salvation or enlightenment? Grid offered, his tone dry. Or free Wi-Fi, Ash quipped, earning a ghost of a smile from Sylvan. Delta interjected, I suggest a response, Captain. Something that acknowledges their interpretation while keeping us alive. Yeah, because telling them, oops, wrong number, probably won't cut it, Sylvan said, tapping her chin in thought. With a deep breath, she composed a reply, fingers flying over the keyboard. Esteemed Zoltari, we welcome you with open arms and open minds. We are honored by your presence and invite you to engage in a peaceful exchange of knowledge. Keep it vague, Ash advised, peering over Sylvan's shoulder. The last thing we need is to promise them a miracle. Way ahead of you, Sylvan muttered, sending the message before she second-guessed herself. The wait for a response was agonizing, each second stretching into infinity. The crew watched, tension coiled tight among them like a spring ready to snap. Finally, the Zolthari's reply blinked onto the screen, the symbols twisting into a crude but understandable translation. The exchange is welcomed. Prepare for our arrival. May the wisdom of the stars guide us. The words hung in the air, a promise and a threat all wrapped in one. So, they're coming over for tea? Grit deadpanned. Seems like it, Sylvan replied, her mind racing through contingency plans. Ash's voice was edged with sarcasm. Let's hope they're not the type of guests that overstay their welcome. Sylvan chuckled, though there was little humor in it. For our sake, I hope they brought snacks. The Zoltari ship moved closer, its presence a looming shadow that threatened the delicate balance of New Atlantis. The crew exchanged glances, a wordless agreement to face whatever came next with the same grim determination that had carried them this far. Delta, keep us updated on their approach, Sylvan ordered, her resolve hardening. Of course, Captain, Delta replied, its usual cheerfulness replaced by a measure of sincere efficiency. Ash leaned back in her chair, a wry smile playing on her lips. You know, when I signed up for this gig, I expected a bit of danger. Just thought it had come from faulty wiring, not space zealots. Surprise, Sylvan said, her own smile tempered by the gravity of their situation. Welcome to the universe's weirdest party. As they prepared for the Zolthari's arrival, the crew steeled themselves for whatever lay ahead. The future was uncertain, the stakes higher than ever, but in that uncertainty lay a sliver of hope, a chance for something greater than they had ever imagined. And as the Zoltari ship descended, casting its shadow over the hexagonal platforms of New Atlantis, Sylvan Mira and her crew stood ready to meet whatever fate had in store, armed with nothing but their wits and a healthy dose of gallows humor. The Zoltari ship, affectionately dubbed the Holy Looney Bin by Ash, loomed over New Atlantis like a bad omen, or worse, a tax collector. Its descent caused more vibrations across the linked hexagonal platforms than Sylvan cared to admit. Not that she would admit anything, especially to Grit, whose optimism had taken a nosedive faster than a drone with a dead battery. Sylvan, Grit said, his voice a rare blend of disbelief and resignation, do you think they brought popcorn, or are they just here for the preaching? If we're lucky, they're more into sharing snacks than sermons, Sylvan replied, her eyes never leaving the screen displaying the alien vessel. But knowing our luck, prepare for a lecture. The atmosphere on the submersible was thicker than the bottom of a corporate expense report. With the Zoltari emissaries preparing to flood their city like overeager solicitors, it was up to Sylvan and Delta to play the role of reluctant diplomats, a role neither had particularly auditioned for. Delta's mechanical voice buzzed through Sylvan's wrist console. Incoming transmission from the Zoltari, Captain. Shall I put them through or tell them we're not interested in their newsletter? Put them through, Sylvan sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Might as well get the awkward introductions over with. The screen flickered to life, revealing an alien with more limbs than a dysfunctional family reunion and a face that seemed to have misplaced its features. The alien's voice was a high-pitched whine, like a kettle that was really excited about boiling water. Greetings, Earth leaders, the alien intoned, its every word dripping with reverence. I am Zenith, chief interpreter of the divine signals. We come with open hearts to partake in the wisdom of your kind. Great, Sylvan muttered under her breath, an audience with the Galactic fan club. Welcome, Zenith, Sylvan said aloud, mustering the politest smile she could manage under the circumstances. We're honored by your visit. Love what you've done with the spaceship. Zenith's eyes, or what appeared to be eyes, given their eerie glow, blinked in what Sylvan could only interpret as gratitude. Thank you, Earth Leader. We eagerly anticipate the sharing of your divine insights. Ash coughed, covering a snort of laughter with her hand. Divine insights? Sure, we've got those lying around somewhere. Grit shot her a warning look, which Ash returned with a casual shrug. Subtlety, after all, was not her strong suit. Zenith, Sylvan continued, we're happy to share what we can. But, could you clarify what exactly you're looking for? Our version of divine wisdom might be a bit different from yours. Zenith's head bobbed enthusiastically. Of course, great Earth Leader. We seek to understand the messages that you convey through your cosmic interactions, the signals of the universe that guide your race. Signals of the universe, Sylvan echoed, glancing at Delta through the corner of her eye. Right, I think we can help with that. Translation, Ash muttered from aside, they want the secret of life, the universe, and everything. And all we've got are old sitcoms and some questionable memes. Sylvan's wrist console buzzed again. Captain, Delta chimed in, I've prepared a presentation based on the data we've received. It's a mix of scientific discovery and, as Ash would say, good old-fashioned space jazz. Perfect, Sylvan replied, her tone laced with sarcasm. Let's give them the full experience. The Zolthari's ship settled into a docking position with the city, an unspoken promise of interstellar exchange. A term Sylvan suspected would be interpreted as exchange of pleasantries and awkward stares. The crew made their way to the meeting chamber, a space that normally served as a cafeteria but now hosted the first, and hopefully last, cultural exchange potluck. The room was hastily rearranged, the tables filled with a selection of Earth's finest delicacies. Processed snacks, an assortment of condiments, and that one inevitable fruitcake that had been passed down through generations like a cursed heirloom. The Zoltari delegation entered with a flourish, their movements more reminiscent of synchronized swimmers than diplomats. Zenith led the party, arms, or were they tentacles, outstretched in what Sylvan could only assume was a gesture of goodwill. "Welcome to our humble abode," Sylvan said, gesturing around the room with an exaggerated sweep of her hand. "Feel free to help yourselves. We've got dip, chips, and a fruitcake that might outlive us all." Zenith approached the table, gazing at the spread with a mix of curiosity and confusion. Such offerings, he marveled, reaching for a brightly wrapped package of snack cakes. "We are deeply honored by your generosity." Ash leaned over to Sylvan, whispering, "If they start worshipping the Twinkies, I might actually lose it." The delegation settled in, their multiple eyes scanning the room with equal parts awe and incomprehension. Sylvan motioned for Delta to start the presentation, hoping to translate their terrestrial chaos into something resembling cosmic wisdom. Delta's voice filled the room, the presentation flickering to life on the screen with all the pomp of a budget science fair. "Welcome, esteemed visitors, to the wonders of Earth's cosmic understanding. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your tentacles inside the ride." Zenith watched the screen intently, his expression one of reverence mixed with the kind of confusion usually reserved for first-time parents or people assembling furniture without instructions. The presentation featured everything from Earth's advancements in space travel to the more whimsical elements of human culture, like, say, sock puppets. "So, Captain," Grit whispered, "what's our plan if they decide we're not the divine inspiration they're looking for?" "Improvise," Sylvan replied with a wry smile. "And hope the fruitcake doesn't become sentient before we do." Delta continued with its spirited narration, highlighting the quirkier aspects of Earth's achievements with a certain flair that only an AI could muster. It wasn't long before Zenith leaned forward, eyes wide with intrigue. "Fascinating," he breathed. "Your kind truly is blessed with a unique wisdom." Sylvan couldn't tell if he was referring to the wealth of human knowledge or the sock puppets, but decided it was best not to ask. As the presentation wound to a close, Zenith approached Sylvan, a gleam in his eyes, or whatever passed for eyes. "Great Earth Leader," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "we are deeply moved by your teachings. We wish to learn more of your cosmic ways." Sylvan exchanged a glance with Ash, whose expression hovered between disbelief and the kind of humor found in a particularly bleak comedy club. "Of course, Zenith," Sylvan said diplomatically. "We'd be happy to continue these exchanges. Perhaps you could share some of your own knowledge with us?" Zenith nodded eagerly, his limbs quivering in what Sylvan hoped was agreement. "Indeed, we shall share the knowledge of the Zoltari, and together, we shall reach new heights of understanding." "Great," Sylvan replied, her smile genuine this time. "Let's keep this collaboration going." As the meeting concluded, the Zoltari delegation departed with promises of future cultural exchanges, leaving behind an atmosphere of cautious optimism, or, as Ash put it, a recipe for intergalactic indigestion. The crew gathered in the submersible's control room once again, the tension replaced by a sense of impending farce. "Well," Sylvan said, collapsing into a chair, "that went better than expected. They didn't declare a holy war, so that's a win." Grit chuckled, his usual optimism tentatively resurfacing. "Guess we pulled it off, Captain. We might actually survive this mess." Ash grinned, leaning back with a theatrical stretch. "See, I told you the fruitcake would save us all." Delta's voice interjected with its usual chipper tone. "For the record, Captain, the Zoltari appear quite taken with our cultural prowess, especially the sock puppets." Sylvan shook her head, unable to suppress a laugh. If sock puppets and fruitcake are the keys to interstellar diplomacy, maybe humanity isn't as doomed as I thought. As the crew settled into the familiar rhythms of their duties, the Zoltari ship remained a looming presence, a constant reminder of the delicate balance between misunderstanding and mutual respect. Yet in that precarious space, Sylvan found a sliver of hope, a chance for collaboration between worlds vastly different, yet curiously alike in their unpredictability. And as the submersible hummed beneath the ocean's surface, Sylvan Mira looked toward the uncertain future with a renewed sense of purpose and a healthy dose of skepticism. After all, if they could handle the Zoltari, perhaps they could handle whatever else the universe had in store. Besides, she mused with a smirk, they always had the fruitcake. Sylvan Mira leaned back against the cold, hard wall of the submersible, feeling the familiar hum of the ocean's endless assault above them. She sighed deeply, her eyes fixed on the screen displaying streams of alien data that seemed as unintelligible as a toddler's attempt at cursive. Delta, she muttered, rubbing her temples, please tell me you've got something useful from all this? Otherwise, I'll start taking up knitting. Delta's voice, as always, was as chipper as a caffeinated cheerleader. Captain, I've filtered out the noise and identified key patterns. However, interpreting them is akin to deciphering the mating rituals of jellyfish. Fantastic, Sylvan grunted. Just what we need, an alien Rorschach test. Ash piped up from the corner, fiddling with the drone that had become more of a pet project than a functional piece of equipment. Hey, Sylvan, maybe we should just send them the fruitcake again. Worked wonders last time. Sylvan shot her a half-amused, half-exasperated glance. Ash, I swear, if you mention that fruitcake one more time, I'm launching it into orbit myself. Grit, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke up. Jokes aside, Captain, we've got a real problem here. Earth's AI governors are breathing down our necks, wanting results. And the Zoltari are unraveling faster than my sanity. Tell me about it, Sylvan replied, glancing at the wrist console pinging with urgent messages. The Zoltari factions are splitting like a dysfunctional family at Thanksgiving. Ash threw her hands up in mock despair. Great, more drama. Just what we need. An alien soap opera. Sylvan couldn't help but snicker. Days of our alien lives. Coming soon to a galaxy near you. The atmosphere in the submersible was tense, the humor only a thin veil over the stress that threatened to suffocate them. The Zoltari ship, still hovering ominously over New Atlantis, was now a powder keg, each faction interpreting the divine signals with the fervor of a conspiracy theorist at a UFO convention. Zenith's faction maintained their beatific smiles, insisting that Earth held the secrets of the cosmos. Meanwhile, a rival faction, led by a charismatic Zoltari named Vrax, argued that the signals were a call to conquest. This delightful bit of fanaticism was further complicated by a third group that believed the signals were simply the cosmic equivalent of spam mail. Sylvan, you need to talk to them, Grit urged, his voice tinged with the kind of desperation usually reserved for salesmen and politicians. We can't let this spiral out of control. The last thing we need is an alien civil war over who gets to sit at the cool kids' table. Sylvan groaned, wishing she had something stronger than recycled air to drink. All right, let's set up a meeting. But if they start throwing tentacles, I'm out. The submersible ascended cautiously through the murky depths, emerging in the docking bay with all the elegance of a penguin attempting ballet. Sylvan and her team marched into the hastily assembled negotiation chamber, a room that normally served as the storage for questionable art projects from New Atlantis' more avant-garde community. The Zoltari were already there, their forms draped in shimmering fabrics that looked suspiciously like repurposed shower curtains. Zenith and Vrax stood at opposing ends of the room, flanked by their respective followers, each group eyeing the other with the same warmth you'd expect between a cat and a particularly cheeky mouse. Sylvan cleared her throat, stepping into the center of the room. All right, everyone, let's skip the pleasantries and get down to business. Zenith, Vrax, we've got to find a middle ground here before things get messy. Zenith inclined his head, an attempt at diplomacy that was slightly undermined by the fact that his nose, or what passed for a nose, was a little too close to his ears. Great Earth Leader, we seek only to enlighten and be enlightened. Enlightenment through subjugation, Vrax interjected, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Classic. Sylvan pinched the bridge of her nose. Listen, you two, this isn't a religious retreat, and we're definitely not a conquest waiting to happen. We've got enough problems without adding an intergalactic pissing contest to the mix. Vrax leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Sylvan. And what do you suggest, Earth Leader? That we abandon our beliefs and bow to your whims? No, Sylvan replied, her voice steady. I'm suggesting a ceasefire. Let's focus on understanding these signals instead of tearing each other apart. Besides, we've got enough chaos without adding a fight over who gets top billing in the cosmic playbill. Zenith nodded, his multiple limbs, tentacles, whatever they were, settling down slightly. Perhaps we can find merit in these words. Understanding, rather than conflict. Vrax rolled his eyes, which, given his alien physiology, was a far more dramatic gesture than any human could manage. Fine, but any sign of trickery and you'll wish you'd stuck to your fruitcakes. With a begrudging agreement struck, Sylvan and her team returned to the submersible, the mood somewhere between hopeful and doomed. As they descended back into the depths, Ash played with the controls, her fingers tapping nervously. "Well, that was something," she said, flashing a wry smile. "At least they didn't blow us up." Yet, Grit added, ever the realist, though his tone was lighter than before. Delta's voice piped up again, cheerfully oblivious to the tension. "Captain, it seems our presentation has struck a chord. Shall I prepare another?" "Oh, please do," Sylvan replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "And let's add an entire section on the intricacies of sock puppetry while we're at it." The submersible settled back into its docking station beneath New Atlantis, the familiar hum of the ocean a constant reminder of the fragile balance they walked. Sylvan checked the wrist console. The flood of alien data continued unabated, streams of indecipherable symbols and signals that mocked their every attempt at understanding. "Delta," Sylvan said, a hint of desperation creeping into her voice, "what's the status on those signals from the edge of the solar system? Any chance they're just calling to say hello?" "Unlikely, Captain," Delta replied, always the bearer of bad news wrapped in good manners. "The signals are encrypted and complex, suggesting advanced technology. It's a puzzle wrapped in a riddle, dipped in cosmic sauce." "Great," Sylvan muttered, "just what we needed, another layer of mystery." Grit leaned against the console, his expression thoughtful. "So, what's the plan, Captain? We can't keep juggling these balls forever." Sylvan sighed, the weight of the universe, or at least this corner of it, heavy on her shoulders. "We keep at it, Grit. One way or another, we'll figure out what's going on. We have to." Ash snorted, amusement flickering in her eyes. "And if not, we'll go down in history as the crew that tried to negotiate peace with a fruitcake and sock puppets." Sylvan couldn't help but chuckle, despite the tension. "If that's our legacy, so be it." The crew settled into a semblance of routine, the relentless pressure of the situation tempered by gallows humor and shared determination. As they worked, the Zoltari ship remained a looming presence, its factions a constant reminder of the delicate balance they were attempting to maintain. The flood of alien data continued unabated, a puzzle that seemed to mock their every attempt at understanding. Yet in the darkness, there was a flicker of hope, a chance that, despite the odds, they might just find a way through. "Delta," Sylvan said, her voice firm, "keep working on those signals. And keep me posted on any changes with the Zoltari. We're not out of this yet." "As you wish, Captain," Delta replied, ever obedient, ever optimistic. And so, beneath the ocean's relentless embrace, surrounded by the chaos of uncertain alliances and enigmatic messages, Sylvan Mira and her crew faced the unknown with humor, determination, and a healthy dose of skepticism. Because when the universe throws you into the deep end, all you can do is swim. Or, Sylvan mused with a smirk, learn to juggle fruitcakes. The submersible grumbled its way through the dark waters like an old man with a bad back reluctantly forced into morning calisthenics. Sylvan Mira, captain and reluctant diplomat, stood at the helm, staring at the streams of alien data flashing across the screen. The signals were a mess of tangled symbols that made her headache worse than it already was. The Zoltari factions were like cats in a sack, and Sylvan had the unenviable job of keeping the sack from exploding. Delta's voice piped up from the console, as relentlessly cheerful as an AI could be without sprouting pom-poms. "Captain, I believe I've found something within the data stream. It's a bit like discovering a needle in a galaxy-sized haystack." "Great," Sylvan muttered, "and here I was hoping the haystack would just set itself on fire." Grit and Ash were with her, as usual, although Ash's attention was divided between the screen and the drone she was tinkering with. Grit leaned against the console, arms crossed, looking like a man who had spent the better part of his life preparing for an apocalypse only to discover he'd forgotten to pack snacks. "Well, what's the needle then?" Grit asked, his voice a gruff counterpoint to Delta's cheer. "Another message about how we're all going to be subjugated by the cosmic overlords of insanity." "It appears to be." Delta paused for dramatic effect, because why wouldn't an AI do that? "A map." Sylvan perked up, if only a little. "A map to what?" "The nearest black hole where we can throw all this nonsense." "Not quite," Delta replied. "It's a map of the Zoltari star system, with a prominent marking on what appears to be a moon." "A moon," Ash echoed, dropping her tools with a clatter. "Why am I getting secret alien base with a giant laser vibes from this?" Because you've watched too many old human movies, Sylvan replied, rubbing her temples. But it could be important. It might explain why the Zoltari factions are more interested in yelling at each other than being reasonable. Grit's frown deepened. Yeah, assuming we can actually get them to listen without trying to disintegrate us for suggesting they're wrong. Which is about as likely as a cat hurting itself, Ash added, snickering. Especially when said cats are armed and have a religion. Sylvan took a deep breath, trying to push back the wave of frustration. All right, let's break this down. Delta, can you analyze the specifics of this map? See if there's anything we can use to convince them we're not just making it up. Already on it, Captain, Delta said, with the kind of efficiency that made Sylvan envious. I'll compile the key points into a presentation. Perhaps with sock puppets? Spare me, Sylvan grumbled. I'm saving the sock puppets for when we reach rock bottom. Hey, that's the spirit. Ash grinned, her hands now fiddling with a pair of wires that looked suspiciously like they'd been part of something important. Always save the best for last. As the submersible continued its journey, Sylvan tried to focus on Delta's analysis. The map was detailed, the markings precise, and it seemed to indicate something significant. Whether it was a power source, a relic, or just another interstellar tourist trap, Sylvan couldn't tell. But she had the feeling it was the kind of secret that could either save them or doom them. The moon's coordinates, Delta announced, interrupting Sylvan's spiraling thoughts. They align with the transmissions we've been receiving from the edge of the solar system. Which means what? Grit asked, scratching his chin. We're dealing with a moon that's also phoning home? Or it's a relay station, Sylvan mused, her mind piecing together fragments of a puzzle. A place where the Zoltari could communicate with their far-off brethren or enemy factions without needing to throw themselves into the void. Ash let out a low whistle. Well, that's a barrel of fun. So we're looking at a potential communications hub, or maybe a party reservation for when the rest of them show up. And we have to convince the Zoltari factions to give us a peek at their secret moon, Grit added, grimacing. That'll go over about as well as an uninvited guest at a funeral. Sylvan shook her head. We've got no choice. If this can help us understand what's happening, we have to try. Otherwise, we're just floundering around in the dark. Floundering's fun, Ash said, feigning innocence. But only if you're a fish. The submersible docked with the unsettling grace of a swan that had taken a few too many hits to the head, and the crew disembarked, their task looming over them like a storm cloud. The negotiation chamber awaited, filled with Zoltari representatives who were as likely to listen as they were to sprout wings and start a synchronized flying routine. Zenith and Vrax stood at opposite ends once more, the air between them charged with enough tension to power a small city. Sylvan stepped forward, her mind a whirlpool of potential outcomes, none of them particularly comforting. All right, everyone, she began, trying to inject some authority into her voice. We've found something in the data that might help clarify the messages you've been receiving. Zenith's expression was one of cautious interest. And what is it you have discovered, Earth Leader? A map, Sylvan replied, gesturing for Delta to display the projection. A map that points to a moon within your system. We think it might explain the signals. Vrax's eyes narrowed, suspicion etched into every alien feature. A map you claim to have interpreted. How convenient for you. Sylvan resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Look, we're not here to spin tales. We're trying to make sense of the same chaos you are. If there's a chance this moon holds answers, we need to check it out. It could be a trap, Vrax countered, his tone as sharp as the point of a knife. A ruse to distract us from our true purpose. Or it could be the key to understanding what the hell is going on, Grit interjected, his frustration bubbling to the surface. We're not asking for trust, just a chance to see if there's something there. You know, other than rocks and metaphorical dead ends. Zenith considered this, the flurry of movement in his tentacles a sign of deep thought, or indigestion, Sylvan couldn't be sure. What do you propose, Earth Leader? Sylvan took a deep breath. Let us send a probe to the moon. We monitor it together, see what it finds. If it's nothing, we'll move on. But if it's something, we work out our next steps together. A murmur of discussion rippled through the Zoltari, their language a mix of clicks and tones that reminded Sylvan of a malfunctioning music box. She felt the weight of their gaze, the burden of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. Finally, Zenith nodded, a reluctant agreement. Very well, we shall observe your probe and judge for ourselves. Vrax's eyes flicked between Sylvan and Zenith, suspicion lingering. But any sign of deception, and we will not hesitate to take action. Understood, Sylvan replied, her voice steady, even as doubt gnawed at her insides. We're in this together, whether we like it or not. With the tentative agreement in place, Sylvan and her team returned to the submersible, the weight of expectation hanging over them like an impending storm. The probe was prepped and launched, its trajectory set toward the distant moon, a solitary speck in the vast expanse of space. As they watched its progress on the monitor, Ash couldn't help but voice what they were all thinking. Well, here's hoping we find answers and not a giant middle finger from the universe. Or worse, Grit added, his tone dry. Another invitation to a party we didn't know we were attending. Sylvan allowed herself a small smile, despite the gnawing anxiety. No matter what we find, at least we'll have something to work with. Better than twiddling our thumbs. Captain, Delta's voice broke in, cutting through their tension like a knife. The probe is approaching the moon's surface. We should have visual feedback shortly. The crew gathered around the console, eyes fixed on the screen as the probe descended. The image was grainy, distorted by distance and interference, but slowly it resolved into something more tangible. The moon's surface was barren, a desolate landscape of craters and shadows. But amidst the nothingness, something gleamed, an irregular structure, half buried in the dust, its metallic surface catching the faint light of distant stars. As that, Ash began, leaning closer, eyes wide. It's something, Sylvan replied, her voice hushed with awe and disbelief. Something more than we expected. There's your answer, Grit said, a mix of excitement and trepidation in his voice. Now we just have to convince the Zoltari it's worth investigating. Sylvan nodded, her heart pounding with the thrill of discovery. And hope it's not Pandora's box waiting to swallow us whole. As they watched, the probe's cameras continued to relay images of the mysterious structure, each frame a tantalizing glimpse into the unknown. The mood in the submersible was a tightrope walk between hope and dread, a delicate balance that could tip with the slightest push. But for now, they had a chance to pull back the curtain on the mystery that had ensnared them all. Whether it would lead to salvation or ruin was a question that only time could answer. Delta, Sylvan said, her voice steady with determination. Prepare a report for the Zoltari. Let's see if we can get them on board with a closer look. We've got a mystery to solve. As you wish, Captain, Delta replied, the AI's tone imbued with a note of optimism that Sylvan couldn't quite share. But as they prepared for the next stage of their uncertain journey, one thing was clear. They weren't alone in their quest for understanding. And sometimes, that was just enough to keep going, even in the depths of the unknown. Sylvan stared at the screen, where the Zoltari delegation's faces were a mix of skepticism and the kind of irritation you see on a cat that just discovered its litter box isn't self-cleaning. The probe's footage looped like a bad reality show, replaying the mystery structure on the moon. Well, folks, she began with a smile that was more grimace, we've got ourselves a bona fide alien enigma. Has Christmas comes early vibes, doesn't it? Zenith's tentacles twitched, possibly in agreement, possibly in an attempt to throttle the nearest thing to a human throat. You claim this structure is significant, but how does this dissolve the conflict among our factions, Earth Leader? I'm glad you asked, Sylvan replied, feigning enthusiasm like a teacher faced with yet another parent-teacher conference. It's all about communication and shared insight. We're suggesting a little group tour, one where no one tries to shoot the guide. Vrax snorted, a sound unpleasant enough to remind everyone of why cross-species diplomacy wasn't a universally celebrated career path. A tour to what end? You've shown us a pile of metal and shadows. Ah, but it's not just any pile of metal and shadows, Ash interjected, her grin wide enough to be dangerous. It's a culturally neutral pile. No religious symbols, no faction bias, a place where everyone can be equally confused and curious. Think of it as an alien Switzerland, Grit added, deadpan. Except less chocolate, more existential dread. Zenith considered this, the ominous silence stretching long enough for Sylvan to wonder if she should have gone into used spaceship sales instead. Very well, he said finally. We shall accompany your probe's findings with a delegation. Great, a field trip, Ash muttered under her breath. I'll bring the snacks. Sylvan shot her a look that was half warning, half gratitude. We'll coordinate the logistics. Meanwhile, let's all dare to dream of a peaceful conclusion to this mess. Back in the submersible, Sylvan let out a breath she'd been holding since the Zoltari started debating the merits of their proposal. Well, they didn't shoot it down outright. That's progress. Progress, as in putting off inevitable doom, Grit said, preparing his latest doom prepping checklist. Hey, we're not doomed until we've at least checked the potential doom box, Ash quipped, her fingers dancing over the drone she was rigging with new sensors. And I like leaving that one unchecked. Delta's cheerful voice broke through the banter. Captain, preparations for the joint exploration are underway. I've prepared a briefing that's short on sock puppets, long on pragmatic optimism. Just how I like it, Sylvan replied, watching the rundown of coordinates and protocols. Let's keep it tight, folks. The Zoltari have been known to have the patience of a sugar-high toddler in a candy store. As the day of the big adventure dawned, or whatever passed for dawn in space, they found themselves once again in the negotiation chamber, where tension had become as regular as the morning caffeine fix. Zenith and Vrax were present, their entourages buzzing with the fervor of bees deciding whether to sting or make honey. Sylvan cleared her throat. All right, everyone, let's make this a seamless collaboration. Safety first, exploration second, and please, no religious wars third. Vrax's expression was stony, his gaze fixed on Sylvan with all the warmth of a glacier. We will accompany you, Earth Leader, but know that our vigilance does not waver. Any breach of trust will result in consequences dire enough to make the apocalypse blush. Yes, I get it, Sylvan interrupted, her patience as thin as the atmosphere on a vacant moon. Now, let's get on with saving all our collective necks, shall we? The combined teams boarded the shuttle with a tension so thick it could have been sliced and served as a particularly unappetizing dish. Ash fiddled with her drone, now equipped for every conceivable scenario, while Grit settled into a seat with the air of a man hoping for a ride that didn't end in flames. As they approached the moon, Sylvan's wrist console buzzed with a message from Delta. Captain, telemetry is stable. We're ready for descent. Sylvan nodded, addressing the cabin. All right, folks, buckle up. Let's see what kind of secrets this moon has been keeping from us. The shuttle trembled as it penetrated the thin lunar atmosphere, landing with a thud that rattled Sylvan's teeth. The hatch opened, revealing the desolate landscape, and there stood the structure, looming like the universe's most cryptic art installation. Zenith and Vrax stepped out, their expressions a mix of awe and suspicion. It is impressive, Zenith conceded, his voice tinged with something that might have been reverence or acid reflux. Impressive? Vrax countered, scowling. You mean a potential trap? Or a potential opportunity, Sylvan said, her voice firm. Let's keep an open mind, or the closest thing to it. The group advanced toward the structure, its surface shimmering as if mocking their attempts to understand. Ash's drone flitted ahead, scouting for any surprises that might turn field trip into last stand. Is it just me, Grit muttered, or does this place feel like it's been waiting for a punchline since the dawn of time? More like the setup to one hell of a cosmic joke, Ash replied, her drone picking up traces of energy that danced like mischievous spirits across its sensors. As they stood before the structure, Sylvan cleared her throat. All right, let's see if we can get this thing to spill its secrets without triggering a cosmic whoopee cushion. Zenith approached, tentacles weaving in a pattern that Delta had identified as a Zoltari gesture of inquiry or confusion. What do you propose, Earth Leader? Delta, assess the structure. Let's see if it has any friendly user interfaces or just cryptic alien riddles. On it, Captain, Delta responded, the AI's tone as cheerful as ever, even in the face of potential doom. Analyzing structural integrity and potential points of interaction. As Delta's report streamed in, Ash and Grit worked to decipher the surface inscriptions, a task that seemed more like translating a cosmic prank than serious diplomacy. Any progress? Sylvan asked, resisting the urge to tap her foot. Depends on your definition of progress, Ash replied, adjusting her drone's sensors. We've found inscriptions in a redundant language. It's like someone decided to write their shopping list in ancient Sumerian. Grit squinted at the symbols. Or someone with a passion for cryptic crossword puzzles. Zenith regarded the structure, his voice low. Do you believe this holds the key to our conflict? Honestly, Sylvan said, shrugging. I think it holds the key to why this universe is a giant cosmic joke. She gestured to Ash and Grit. But if there's a chance it can help us understand your signals and resolve your faction's issues, we'd be fools not to try. Vrax's eyes narrowed, suspicion still a constant companion. And if it turns out to be nothing? Then we're no worse off than we started, Sylvan replied, her tone frank. We're all chasing shadows here, but at least we're doing it together. The group exchanged glances, a silent agreement forming amidst the shared exasperation. Whatever secrets the structure held, they would face it as one unwieldy, bickering, interspecies team. As Delta continued its analysis, Sylvan allowed herself a moment to breathe, the weight of the mission settling like an oversized space cape upon her shoulders. Hey, Delta, anything promising? Actually, yes, Delta said, the AI's voice tinged with excitement. There's a central system within the structure that responds to our signals. It's like the place has been waiting for someone to knock. Well, let's not keep it waiting, Ash said, firing up the drone's interface with a smirk. Maybe it's in the mood to chat. Or maybe it's got a doomsday routine ready to roll out, Grit added, not entirely joking. Either way, I say we get this show on the road. The team gathered around as Delta initiated a connection, the structure humming with a life of its own. The air was charged with anticipation, a cocktail of hope and dread, as the first flickers of communication danced across their screens. Sylvan watched, her heart pounding like a drumline in a dystopian parade. This was it. The moment they'd been hurtling toward, whether with reckless abandon or cautious optimism. The structure's response was slow, as if it were waking from millennia of slumber. Symbols and data scrolled across their screens, a cascade of information that was both tantalizing and bewildering. Looks like we've found the universe's longest user manual, Ash remarked, eyes wide with incredulity. Or the first chapter of a really dense novel, Grit muttered, squinting at the data. One that's all prologue, no plot. Sylvan looked over the stream of information, her mind racing to keep up. It was a flood of data, a story told in fragments and symbols, and within it lay the potential to dissolve the conflicts that had plagued the Zoltari. Delta, can you make sense of this? Sylvan asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. Already on it, Captain, Delta replied, working to decode the ancient language. It appears to be a history of the Zoltari factions, their origins, and the misunderstandings that led to their schism. Zenith leaned in, his expression a mix of awe and realization. This could change everything, or nothing, Vrax said, though even his voice had softened. But it is a start. As Delta continued its translation, Sylvan allowed herself a moment of hope. They had come to this forsaken moon seeking answers, and perhaps, just perhaps, they had found the key to forging a new understanding. Well, folks, she said, looking around at the motley crew of humans and aliens, it seems we've stumbled onto the universe's most awkward reconciliation seminar. The laughter that followed was genuine, a shared moment of levity amidst the gravity of their mission. As the structure's secrets unfolded, they were united not by species or ideology, but by the simple, stubborn hope that they could find a way forward together. In the end, it was that hope that would carry them through, even as the universe continued to spin its endless, enigmatic tales. Sylvan leaned back in her stiff chair aboard the submersible, the hum of the engines a drowsy lullaby in the background. Peace, or its awkward cousin, had finally tiptoed into the room, and the Zoltari delegation was treating it like an unexpected guest, curious but suspicious as hell. Well, folks, looks like we've managed to stop the universe from imploding, at least for today, Sylvan announced, her voice dripping with that brand of sarcasm that had become second nature. And hey, that's not nothing, right? Zenith's tentacles twitched, a gesture Sylvan had come to recognize as amusement, or maybe digestive issues, it was hard to tell. Indeed, Earth Leader, our factions have agreed to discussions we haven't had since, well, since before our ancestors decided tentacle wrestling was a political strategy. Progress, then, Sylvan muttered, resisting the urge to pinch herself. It seemed that the Zoltari were finally seeing humans as allies rather than intergalactic babysitters or, worse, omnipotent deities. She'd always thought of herself as more of a janitor, cleaning up messes with a mop and a prayer. Earth and Zoltari in an alliance, Grit mused from his corner, his feet kicked up on the control panel. Guess the universe really does have a funny way of reminding us it's the cosmic comedian. Yeah, and we're the punchline, Ash added, her drone bobbing beside her like a mechanical pet with ADHD. Sylvan smirked, her gaze flicking to the screen where Delta was processing yet another flood of alien data. "What's the verdict, Delta? Are we going to be interstellar pen pals now?" "Looks like it, Captain," Delta replied, its voice as chipper as ever. "With the Zoltari recognizing Earth as equals, we're looking at potential cultural exchanges, technological sharing, and, dare I say, a stable peace." She snorted. "Stable peace is about as likely as Grit here giving up sarcasm for Lent." "Hey, I'm as stable as a one-legged stool, thank you very much," Grit retorted, grinning lazily. Vrax, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "Our alliance could indeed be advantageous. But beware, Earth Leader. Our histories show that alliances can be as fragile as the surface tension on your, what is it called? A soap bubble." "Well, aren't you just a ray of sunshine?" Sylvan muttered under her breath. "Don't worry, Vrax. We're well aware that good intentions can pave a road straight to hell." Ash powered down her drone, her enthusiasm bubbling over. "It's not all bad, you know. I mean, think about the possibilities. We could learn so much from each other. You guys have, like, tentacle tech we haven't even dreamed of." Zenith tilted his head, his tentacles rippling with what could only be interpreted as pride. "Indeed, our technology is diverse." Grit chuckled. "Yeah, and we've got something called coffee. Let's see how your tech stacks up against the power of caffeine." Sylvan rubbed the bridge of her nose, the weight of the past days now a bearable burden. For once, they'd managed not to wreck everything. No explosions, no interstellar warfare, just a tentative step toward a future that didn't involve them being vaporized. "Delta, how's Earth taking the news?" Sylvan asked, half expecting the AI governors to demand a recount or a second opinion. "Let's just say the party is cautiously optimistic," Delta responded. "They're setting up communication lines and prepping for the first wave of cultural exchanges." "Cultural exchanges," Sylvan echoed, shaking her head. "I can only imagine the kind of hoops we'll have to jump through for that." Grit stretched, his joints popping like a string of firecrackers. "It's either that or we all start learning to live with a whole lot of tentacle metaphors." Sylvan grinned despite herself. They'd done it. They'd actually managed to broker peace, or at least, lay the groundwork for something resembling it. She caught Zenith's eye, sharing a nod that was equal parts respect and relief. "The Zoltari offer you our gratitude, Sylvan Mira," Zenith said, his voice carrying a gravitas that was hard to dismiss. "And perhaps, in time, a friendship." For a moment, Sylvan was at a loss for words, a rare occurrence that she quickly covered with a grin. "Well, I'll drink to that. Preferably something stronger than coffee." The crew laughed, a mixture of genuine mirth and the release of pent-up tension. Even Vrax allowed himself a small, albeit begrudging, smile. The alliance formed on that forgotten moon had been unexpected, a twist in the tale that none of them had seen coming. Yet it was the kind of surprise that the universe, in its infinite unpredictability, seemed to delight in. A reminder that even amidst the chaos and cosmic jokes, there was always room for hope. "So, what now?" Ash asked, as she reconfigured her drone to play nice with the Zoltari tech. Sylvan shrugged, looking out at the vastness of space. "Now we keep moving forward. One tentative, stumbling step at a time." "Sounds about right," Grit said, kicking back with the air of a man who'd already decided to enjoy the ride, no matter where it led. As the submersible continued its journey through the depths, the crew settled into a comfortable silence, each lost in thoughts of what lay ahead. The universe might be a cosmic comedian, but for once, the joke was in their favor. And as they navigated the dark waters, Sylvan couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally found their place in this vast, unpredictable cosmos. A place where humans and aliens could stand side by side, sharing stories, trading jibes, and hoping for a brighter, or at least less explosive, tomorrow. "Well, Delta," Sylvan said, breaking the silence, "what do you make of all this?" Delta paused, its processors humming with thought. "I think, Captain, that this is the beginning of a very interesting chapter in interstellar relations." Sylvan laughed, a sound rich with relief and the promise of new adventures. "Yeah, let's just hope it's not a tragedy." And with that, the crew sailed on, ready to face whatever the universe had in store for them next. They were, after all, just a small part in the cosmic comedy, players in a story that, for all its darkness, still had the potential for light.